Hi, everyone, and welcome to Cut and Splice. This is Gil,
This is Jason.
And Matt?
and today we're going to be talking about Waltz with Bashir. It's our first Israeli movie that we're doing, but not our first animated. We had at least one of those, right?
Yeah,
I'm trying to think if it was more than one. I think it was one.
We had at
the
least
Wolf,
one.
the Wolf
Wolf
Brigade,
Brigade.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
General.
Is this our first documentary?
Well, that's
a
the thing,
documentary.
and that's what's interesting about this movie that it is a documentary slash narrative of sorts,
Oh, yeah,
animated.
you're right. It's kind
It
of
wa-
halfway in between.
if I'm not mistaken, it was actually nominated for best animated and best foreign film, but not documentary. And then just this last year in the Oscars, there was this movie Flea that was nominated for like all three. It was documentary, animation, and foreign.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah, it's a very interesting movie. It's an interesting approach. It's basically sort of about PTSD of sorts, and the lead character, who is in a way the filmmaker, is exploring memories gaps that he has in his memories from military service during the Lebanon invasion, the Lebanon War in 1982. And he interviews all these friends, reporters, specialists, people that can help him maybe cut through some of the weeds to rediscover what he's forgotten, and the things that haunt him. And I'm trying to think, when did we first see this, Matt? Did we see this together?
Yeah, we did. We saw it in theaters when it came out. Yeah, and it was just you and me. I don't think Jason was there.
I saw it later on.
Yeah.
So you saw it like before today, Jason?
Yeah, I've had the DVD for probably like 10 years or something.
Oh, okay.
Oh wow.
Cool.
I mean, I watched it one time. I really liked it. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it was just something I never had another. I don't really think I ever had anyone come to my house and go, "What's that?" And then like had a good opportunity to be like, "Oh, you should watch that. We should watch that." Kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what I would say, it is a heavy movie, and because it's a
Yes.
documentary style, it's also a bit slow, but it's short. It's an hour and a half. So that
That helps.
it definitely helps. But I do feel like, as far as recommending it, and I won't get ahead of myself, but I do feel like this would definitely be a yes for anybody that's into animation, because I feel like this is one of the greatest animated movies of all time. I feel like, and even though it's a documentary, I think as a narrative, I mean, some of the sequences and the recreations and the memories are top notch, like really really good stuff. And also, this is reminiscent to me, like what Del Toro said this past year with the Pinocchio movie, is he put this emphasis about animation being a medium, not a kid's medium. And this movie has it in spades. It's a very, very adult animated movie. This is not for kids. And not only that, but it also, in a way, much like Pinocchio, was taking literally the fact that he was a wooden puppet. So he was made of wood, or at least, like it was all puppets. That was, instead of being digital animation, it was stop motion. Here, like the genius of this movie is that, and we can get into it with spoilers in the second part, but um, everything about this movie, from the choice of the medium. Yes, it is convenient because there's certain effects that would be too expensive to do on an Israeli budget. But so there's some of that, but to create these scenes on the cheap, comparatively to a live action, but it's also using it in a way that's perfect for the medium, whether it's the trippiness of some of the sequences, the memories being very vague and very expressionistic, very abstract. Like and all those things are really lend themselves into the movie, and of course the famous ending, at least for anybody who saw it, that we can talk about in the second part, that I felt like was probably the best ending to an animated movie I've ever seen. It was just a perfect ending. That makes this movie just really worthwhile. I personally would recommend it to anybody. If anybody told me like which Israeli movie you should see, this would definitely be like a top 3 for me. And yeah, and if you're into, of course, like whether it's like war movies or animation, definitely documentary. This is like a very unique documentary style movie, I would say. So for all those reasons, I mean, my rating back then, I gave it a 10, and I'm sure there's some element of that that's because it was Israeli or because of this or because of that. But I watched the movie again, and I gotta say, it's flawless. I really, much like I think the last 10 that I gave or something was like Wild Strawberries. I really tried to look for the flaws, but I was like, this is like every like second of this is just spot on. It's really spot on. So I think it's a flawless movie, as much as a movie can be like flawless. There's very few of them.
Bold.
Yeah. I thought it was garbage. No, I didn't. No, I'm basically on the same page. And the funny thing is, there's a movie that preceded it, an animated movie, Renaissance. That
I was going to bring that up too.
Yeah, and that wasn't like really a memorable movie in terms of storytelling, but in terms of visuals, it was like I thought pretty damn gorgeous.
Oh yeah,
and Waltz with Bashir had some of those elements of even though it was in color, there were just so many scenes where it's just monochrome, like one color and then black, and it's just noir as noir can get. Like you can't get any more noir. Like you can't do that in live action. There are going to be midtones in live action, no matter how. I mean, you could do a 12-to-1 contrast ratio. You're still going to have some midtones.
Are you talking about a Renaissance, Waltz with Bashir, or both of them?
Both.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, and just that ability to have that absolute contrast, that absolute darkness, it strikes you visually to the core, especially given the context of what you're watching. So I mean, I wouldn't give it a 10, but I mean, this is like a 9, maybe a 9.3 for me. I don't know. It's a brilliant freaking movie. and it is also so powerful because the filmmaker himself is, in so many ways putting himself in front of a mirror and letting the world see what he doesn't want to see about himself. And it's just absolutely humbling and powerful and gorgeously constructed, and and I do think that the approach to the movie was both pragmatic and artistic. I'll get into a little tidbit once we get into spoilers that stuck out to me upon another visit. But I mean, this was this is a brilliant movie, and everybody should see it. I mean, this isn't obviously the kind of movie that you're gonna like, oh yeah, let's watch this and then we'll go out to the bar and have a couple of beers. Like, no, you're it's like Requiem for a Dream or something like that. No, it's a great movie, but you're gonna feel like somebody just kicked you in the balls. You're just gonna want to go to sleep. uh, you're just gonna want to cry, alone in a dark room for a little while, and that's great. That's exactly what the movie is going for. So yeah, that's my take.
I think this movie is really good. I don't want to sound negative, but it's like you guys have such a high view of it that it's like hard to not, just come off sounding like I'm just saying, something different. But I don't know. I think one of the things I love about the movie is how different it is, and a lot of the stuff that we kind of just sort of touched on. But the fact that the movie is, I wouldn't call this a documentary, but I think it's very documentary-esque. Um, I I think it's like as if the guy, because the guy's the main character is himself. He's the real guy, and he's talking to all the real people that he served with, and then also, I believe, a news reporter, a popular news reporter, and a therapist or something like that. All who have very good insight in the story that's being told, and through these interviews, that's where basically most of the dialogue of the movie is coming from. And so, in that sense, and the fact that each time a new character is introduced in a very documentary style, they put their name up in a little like thing. In that aspect, I do feel that that's where, to me, it feels like a documentary, but it's almost as if I feel like it's more fair to say that this is a movie, this is a narrative movie that was assembled from, or that was made from what could have been a documentary or something like that. I guess that's how I feel about it. I don't know. I mean, and it's not even worth. It's not like it's a point of contention or anything. It's just interesting to me. I find it very fascinating that they basically took that aspect of what could have been easily just a pretty standard documentary. Then they filmed a bunch of stuff, live action footage, to use as a reference to draw storyboards. And then from the storyboards, as basically like digital paintings, they manipulated those drawings using flash animation to create the image that you're seeing on the screen, which is really, if nothing else, very interesting and just fascinating to me. And I don't know. To me, it's like the fact that the character moves from one thing to another, one character to another. But then in between, there's moments where he goes back and is just kind of talking to people on a bench and stuff like that. To me, that's where I feel like it kind of has a bit of a narrative feel to it that doesn't feel like a documentary to me. And I'm not to say that that disqualifies it. Like if it was in someone's list of greatest documentaries of all time, I wouldn't quibble. You know what I'm saying? But like, to me, it just feels like a really interesting, unique movie that was made in a way that's very different, you know? And that's some of the stuff I love about it. But I have to say that, like, for all the things that I love about that, I think with each of those strengths comes some frustrating like things. Nothing that ruins the movie or anything like that, but just to me, like I definitely wouldn't give it like a 10. Like I'm pretty comfortable saying it's like a very strong 7 or even like an 8 is where I'd put it. I really like the movie a lot. It's one of my favorite animated movies, but that's pretty much where I would put it.
I think I definitely agree with you. I do feel like when I watch it, it is more of a narrative than a documentary, because it's his journey. Like it's the journey that he takes. He goes to these places, and it's almost as if there's no camera crew there when he's meeting these
Right.
people, because it's
Yeah.
not set up as an interview. He's sitting on a bench. He's like in the car, and it shifts to an interview when it's about people that are not his friends, like
Yeah.
that it made sense
Yeah.
to him that like if it's he's not his friends, then that's more set up as an interview. Oh, I brought a crew for this specific thing because I'm not it's less conversational,
Sure.
more of an interview, which is an interesting choice. And I can totally see how someone maybe not that you did, but like someone faulting that for the movie for some inconsistency. But for some strange reason, it just really works. It
Oh
makes
yeah.
sense within the context of how it's told. Is that when his friends, he's meeting in bars, he's meeting in homes,
On
but
park bench.
the reporter and the specialist, he'll meet in their offices or set up an interview because it's a bit more official, and he didn't want to, maybe he didn't want to butcher, like to decide for them what the settings are going to be like. It's this thing of like, I don't want to, I guess he could have asked their permission. It's like, oh, could I animate this in the movie as if we're just meeting for a conversation? But he just chose out of respect to say like, well, this is just someone I'm interviewing, then let's just make it an interview. And it's sort of like one of these interesting choices that just makes it a, like you said, a very unique movie. That for me, if anything, kind of bumps up the ratings for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see how definitely
Yeah.
the pacing thing and the pacing shifts and things like that, like for some people it'll be a bit on the slow side, or they wouldn't know what to make of it really. I was like, what are the people's names and stuff? But yeah, to me all those things are a plus. So I definitely yeah, and I think it's totally fine you have different reactions to it too, because whatever it is, whether it's the subject matter or the approach, all those things hit people differently. So
Yeah, to an extent, I kind of find it odd that we talk about documentary versus narrative. I mean, like most of our documentaries are narratives. Documentaries aren't supposed to be news reporting. Uh, they're supposed to be stories. Uh, and I mean, yeah, a lot of documentaries are false narratives, like everything that Michael Moore has ever done.
Oh my God.
Uh, but, uh, uh, you know, but I mean, I, I mean, yeah, you're telling a story, I mean, Man on Wire, I mean, there's a story there,
Yeah,
it's a
but I
narrative,
get
it's a, uh,
I get what you're
it's,
saying, Matt, but at the same
it's
time, like when a person in a conversation about uh film is using the term, if we're discussing whether something is or isn't narrative or isn't documentary, is not to say that any of us were trying to say it's only this or only that, or to say that other
right.
documentaries are not also narratives. But in a shorthand, when you say like if somebody's listening to this trying to determine whether they're interested in seeing it or not, and it's somebody who hates documentaries, I would still recommend this because it's extremely narrative. It doesn't feel like a documentary relative to something like, I don't know, Jesus can.
A Michael Moore movie.
A Michael Moore film. Yeah, exactly.
Although his documentaries are also so entertaining that they're almost like have this narrative flow to them. So
yeah.
I mean, it's easy to do when you're lying. But
no, I just think he's a great filmmaker. He's just very like all his movies, whether I like them or not, as far as the subject matter or his approach. I always feel like, boy, this guy can know how to put a movie together, especially the editing. Like he just really knows his like editing.
But I think we're in the spoiler section at this point, right?
Yeah, I guess we can get into spoilers. Yeah.
I don't know anything else this person has made. So
no, but I guess one thing I would say is that what Jason said is also very, very true. Is that I also would say to someone, if you hate documentaries, it wouldn't be a reason to not watch this movie, because like I said, I do see it as almost as a narrative first, because the recreations of and the memories is such a big chunk of the movie, and it's really what's great. It's the strong part of the movie, that it's something out of a narrative film.
And the flip side is probably accurate too. If you love documentaries, definitely check out this movie.
Exactly, it kind of has a little bit for everybody, and it's in a short, small, like an hour and a half package, but it's heavy. It's something that you really need to be in the mood for. Like most foreign films, it's like also a different language and stuff. So yeah, but I think it's very very worthwhile. But the spoilers then.
Yeah. But spoiler section, and this is really minor, but one of the dudes that Ari interviews, one of his old war buddies, I forget which one it was.
In the Netherlands,
and there's that moment where you've got that recorded dialogue of Ari asking, would you mind if I drew you and your son? And the response was, yes, you can draw whatever you want, just don't film us.
Yeah, that was an interesting touch to leave that in.
Yeah, and I mean, that that was just, that was such a small line, but it kind of got my brain grinding on whether or not that might have been the reasoning for the aesthetic of the movie. Like that, okay, draw us, just don't film us. Is that the reason why this is an animated movie and not a bunch of talking heads?
I think it's one of the many things that made him realize probably that it should be an animated movie, because then there's some distance from from the person, and so there's less people will be more comfortable with that, and and of course it lends itself to later in the movie.
But I mean, again, maybe it's not the reason, but maybe that would have been a catalyst in the filmmaker's thinking of, maybe he was approaching this thinking, okay, maybe I'm just going to make a documentary. I'm just going to have talking heads and, like stock footage, and I'm just going to put this together and make this, make this like a Ken Burns kind of thing. And then, kind of realizing, a lot of these guys just don't want to be filmed. A lot of these guys just don't want to be in front of a camera. Probably for a lot of reasons, and a lot of reasons that you would know better than any of us. But maybe they would be targeted. Maybe they would be, there's probably a certain amount of courage that every one of his subjects took to even talk to him and be a part of it and really discuss what happened in Lebanon way back in 1982 and everything. But
Well, that's
I
actually something I've wondered about because you talk about the friend and that was like out of the country, like in the Netherlands. I guess Holland. I don't know
Holland,
anymore because I've heard like the Netherlands and Holland is not the same country, and all this time I thought it was like I think it's Holland is within the Netherlands or the Netherlands is within Holland. Anyways, but in any case, yeah, he's in Holland, and yeah, and that's one of the interesting plot lines is the fact that he keeps showing up in his dream, like in his memory, that they're coming out of the water and they're like swimming in the water and they're seeing the thing, and this whole time his friend claims, even though they were in the service together, that he wasn't in that specific place with him. So you wonder if maybe he was, but he didn't want to be in it, much like Ari himself. Like he also remembers that massacre happening and them being involved in one way or another, but he's suppressed it so much and he's not gonna go exploring it like a person who's a filmmaker and does it for personal therapy. So he'll like discuss it to some degree, but maybe there's a thing there where like he just is shutting out any idea that he was there, but maybe he was. And then eventually, like towards the end, like once you see that Ari puts it all together that he wasn't coming out of the water, he was the one, you know, shooting the flares up to provide light for the massacre to occur. So that was like his outside part in it. That he took his friend out of it, like he's not there anymore in the memory, and you kind of wonder if like that's, again, it's all construction from all these discussions. So you kind of wonder if that's what's going on with that friend, and it's one of the reasons why he didn't want to get too deep into it. He didn't want to be videotaped. It seems like it was mostly him that had more trepidation about it than anybody else. I don't know. Like, because I think what this movie is doing is it's kind of bringing all these different perspectives on those events. Like it's the Ari's perspective, it's his friend that claims he wasn't there but might have been there. It's unclear. It's like the one who wants to remember, the one who doesn't want to remember, and then the reporter who remembers everything because he's a reporter. It's his job to remember, to report. So it's these three aspects of almost like a Rashomon of like what happened there. And by mixing those three together, you kind of get a cocktail of some sort of like reality, but yeah. So I found that interesting, that aspect, the structure of it.
I could be totally wrong, but my understanding, my take on it when I just saw it right now again was that that regardless of what he shows in the end with who's there with him and who isn't, and the scene that he imagines in his head of the beach and the guys climbing or like climbing out of the water where the flares are coming down onto the city and everything. Clearly that's what he's constructed into his head beforehand, before he starts interviewing everybody. And then later we find out that wasn't really what was going on so much. It wasn't that he was just in the water or anything weird like that. But then right away after the first guy he talks to with the dog story, the next person he's talking to is the friend that says that wasn't there, but was telling him something about the way memories work and how there was that study that was done about memory and how people at first don't remember a memory that should be real, but is constructed, like they're intentionally trying to trick them and tell them that this is a real thing that happened to them as a child, and they say they don't remember it. Then they they press the issue a second time and show them the thing again. And then they said like something astronomical, like 80 something % of people or something like that, the second time said, oh, you know what? I do kind of remember that. And all they're doing is remembering all the little pieces of the stuff that did happen to them, but they're constructing a fake memory that didn't actually happen. The fact that they even took the time to tell that whole story, to me, implies that it doesn't matter what is being shown at the end specifically as like who's next to him and who's not, who's with him and who's not. More than likely, everyone in the unit was all participating as a unit, doing what they were doing. It's just that they're not, the like the guy who doesn't want to remember and the other guy who can't remember and the various characters that he talks to, they've all, not just the main character, I feel like everybody has, as a matter of like a defense mechanism, have constructed some sort of memory to some extent,
Mm-hmm.
That's just my take on it, is that probably it's not meant to be like what we're seeing is 100% exactly what happened. It's just that, that's it is what it is.
Oh no, especially the thing in the water and the flares. Yeah, I think the only thing that you can hope to be mostly accurate is the things that coming out of the report, the recreations of the reporter's point of view.
Sure.
Because he was, even though he was drinking, he was like very sober, and he seems like a very put together kind of guy. Like they kind of, he plays him up as like some sort of like super confident, invincible type of like, reporters are just kind of crazy people. They go into these war zones and they don't give a shit. And the guy's like calling the, Ariel Sharon, who was at the time was like the defense minister, like in the middle of the night, waking him up. It's like, there's a massacre, you got to stop it. It's like they just like, as they say in Hebrew, like they don't see in the eyes, I guess they call it. Like, they just like, they don't really care. They're as extrovert as they come. I guess that was a good way. But then the rest of them, they were younger. These young guys in the military thrust into this crazy, dangerous place. Everything is just, there's a lot of like things that you just want to forget, and then you start, like you said, constructing different things.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I guess if you want, we can get into the ending and then like work our way back if there's anything else that we wanted to touch on. But for me personally, and I was trying to set up Diana for this because we watched this in 2 sittings, and I told her. So she asked me like, I think at the end of the first night, we watched like 45 minutes. It's like, oh, I guess I wonder where all this is going. It's like, oh, it's going. I was like, because to me this ending is like such a shocker, and so for me, like the thing about this movie is, because I mentioned this before, the fact that it's animation and the fact that it's very surreal, all those things put a distance between you and reality. And the fact that he ends the movie, that's all based on these fractions of memories and fractions of reality, and he ends it with actual video footage that is mixed in. And it's not the first movie that did similar things. If I'm not mistaken, didn't like Come and See have something along those lines? Or
I mean, Come and See had, it finished on, geez, I've seen that movie how many times and I don't remember the kid's name. Shooting that photo, not the photo, the painting of Hitler, and
and then there's cutting to
basically World War II rapidly having a montage of going in reverse as he's shooting, as he's unloading his rifle.
Like in some of the horrible images from the war. So I'm sure if the filmmaker of this movie saw Come and See, I'm sure that was slightly inspired by that or other movies where you work into a narrative film actual footage from real life, and it jolts you a bit, because it's like, oh wow, like, especially in Come and See, because it's worse than anything you see in the movie, even though if it's momentary. But I feel like in this movie it's even more powerful, because at least it sends shivers down my spine every time I see it, is that it's it throws you into reality from such a far place, from as far as you can be. You're in a surreal, dreamlike kind of movie, and then you're dropped into this very crude, old, you know, SD quality image
Yeah.
that just puts you like right in there, and
Mhm.
and it's sort of like in a memento like way, where it puts you in the shoes of the lead character. Like he's finally getting it. He finally gets it. Like he gets his role in the massacre. He understands like why he's felt guilty this whole time, because you look at these images and it looks like something straight out of the Holocaust.
Mhm.
And this is happening to a son of Holocaust survivors. Like his parents like survived the Holocaust, and for him to be involved, even if it's in an indirect way, with something like that happening is completely traumatic. So it's and it's the effect is just perfect. Like I've seen very few movies where they really just nailed that, like where the ending just really puts everything together in a way so perfectly. Um, and yes,
Mhm.
it's not as if Israeli soldiers were the ones going in. It was the Christian Lebanese militias that hated that have like a big beef with Muslims and especially Palestinians. They didn't
Mhm.
like them very much because because of Hezbollah
Yeah.
causing chaos in Lebanon, and they obviously they murdered Bashir, like not the Palestinians, but like the I think it was Hezbollah or somebody
Yeah.
assassinated the soon-to-be Christian prime minister of Lebanon. Um, yeah, so there's so much a civil war like issue there, but the fact that the Israeli military was involved in it in any way and enabled it, it puts a big stain on on it ethically. So and I think
Yeah.
that's why it was a very good story to tell, because it's, even though it's not a direct massacre that the Israelis were creating, they could have stopped it. They could have avoided it altogether or stop it sooner. And yeah, it's something that it's a story that it's good that it's been told, and to be told in this way, where like you forget it, and then you understand why you forgot it, because it's just heartbreaking. The cycle of violence and all that.
It's
Yeah.
very effective storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. The whole, unlike Munich, like if you want to talk about like movies that are like about a cycle of violence being a bad thing, this is a movie where it's done perfectly, better than in Munich, where this makes perfect sense to me. Like it makes perfect sense that he would feel guilty, even though he's not directly involved in it. And the fact that he came from, a lot of people tend to blame Israel for, you know, causing a
Just about
genocide.
everything.
Yeah, like causing a genocide, like the
Yeah.
Palestinians, even though their population keeps growing. But this is a specific case, a specific story within a specific war, where you can make that case. Where if they didn't do it directly, they enabled a massacre of Palestinians in a refugee camp that could have been avoided if they had just made a few different or smarter moves. And so
Yeah.
it's one of those specific cases where you can have a come to Jesus moment and say, like, you know what,
No.
we fucked up, and we have done better, we should do better, and it's tragic. Yeah.
Yeah. Upon rewatch, I was kind of reminded of what Ronald Reagan said in his memoirs when these United States actually got militarily involved in Lebanon, and Reagan said, "We will never turn tail and run." And our involvement was like what, a couple of months before we turned tail and run, turned tail and ran. And in his memoir, uh, his justification for turning tail and running was basically like he just said it flat out. I didn't understand the absurdity of Middle Eastern politics. I think he used the word absurdity. He might have said complexity, but when it comes to a bunch of theocracies uh, uh, surrounding a liberal democracy, you're gonna deal with a lot of absurdity. uh, and
Yeah.
full disclosure, I'm a very pro-Israel guy. I mean, I don't think that it's a good idea to ever establish a state on the basis of a religion, but it's the most secular state ever based on uh, a presumption of religion in the history of the world. I mean, it's probably Israel is probably more secular than the United States. But
To the chagrin of all the religious people in Israel.
right, yeah. But yeah, I mean, Israel makes her mistakes, and the difference between Israel and her enemies and many of the other nations that we've seen throughout history is that movies like this exist, and Israel is willing to own the mistakes that she makes. And again, it wasn't entirely on Israel. And a lot of people will look at this. I mean, there are a lot of anti Semites who will look at this and say, like, oh, well, look, Israel is evil. They committed another genocide. They committed a genocide. They're hypocrites, and so on and so forth. And that's not true. But just the fact that Israel and particularly the filmmaker involved is willing to look at this objectively and just say, like, look, we could have done better. I mean, that director and a lot of the people involved better, because we all fuck up. I mean, Israel's been around since what? I forget the founding date, but
It just had its 75th birthday. It's
75th.
48.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to say 70. Yeah, some year. Yeah, 75 years. I mean, Israel's fucked up. We've fucked up. Everybody's fucked up. We all could have done better in certain circumstances. Maybe Israel shouldn't have gotten involved. Maybe Israel should have been involved more. Maybe Israel should have made better decisions. But just deconstructing this massacre that happened and owning the fact that it happened and putting it out there for the world in such a beautiful way. And by beautiful, I mean horrifyingly beautiful. Like, it's like looking at hell in that it's warm and glowing and firing and horrifying. And it's just so well done, and it strikes you right at the heart. And you know and it's probably it was probably harder for the filmmaker to it was definitely harder for the filmmaker to actually examine what actually happened than any of us. And still, a lot of people are going to be more judgmental. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point. It's just really well done.
Yeah. No,
Full
it
stop.
definitely it tends to be that Israeli movies that kind of deal head on with some of the Arab-Israeli conflict and stuff, and friction tend to do well internationally because they're more like self-reflective of sorts. Um, But yeah, I mean, another famous Israel movie that was made into I guess a Broadway show of all things. It was The Band's Visit, and that one was about an Egyptian band that takes like a wrong turn or something, or goes to the wrong location, and they end up in this like small town in Israel, and it's kind of like so this Israeli community kind of takes in this bunch of like Arab musicians, and it's kind of like a culture clash kind of movie, but it's a very sweet little movie. Um, but yeah, and it's that movie did pretty well internationally as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it makes sense for sure. Um, yeah, what I do think is what I really like about this movie, and maybe Jason is the biggest animation guy here, so you can also you know give us 2 cents about that. But I felt like the some of the animation sequences, like especially the ones that are more hallucinogenic of sort, like the woman and the ocean, the naked woman in the ocean and stuff, and a lot of that stuff I felt like was just very strong stuff. A lot of like good symbolism and just like kind of going into the subconscious. I feel like that's something, I guess Israelis are very good at that stuff because they're all into like, you know, like pot and mushrooms and all. And that's why the guy, like, the guy who did have the hallucinations, like why is he in Holland? A lot of Israelis go there because it was one of the only places where you can get like marijuana legally until recently. so so yeah, and some of them go to India and like get into like meditation and like mushrooms and all these things. So I guess that's one thing that Israelis do very well is like get into the whole
Psychedelics.
psychedelics culture. Even from the start, even the hellhounds in the beginning of the movie, that
I think it's
sequence
a
too,
great way to start the movie.
like an
I mean,
action based. Yeah,
well, not just that. I just think that guy's story is gripping.
yeah, like at the store in the bar.
Yeah. I really like the animation on this movie. The movie that Matt already mentioned, Renaissance, is probably the closest thing I could compare it to as far as another animated movie in terms of style. That one I think differs from this in the biggest thing, obviously, just being that it's um, I guess what would you say, monochromatic, because it's like 100% deep blacks and bright
Yeah,
white. And that's
it
it.
is literally
There
black and white.
there is
Like no gray.
no gray at all. It's just solid black, solid white. And but also the second thing I would say that distinguishes it is that and this is not anything bad about this movie at all. It's just a difference that the movie Renaissance, the there's a extremely high level of detail in all the things that are drawn. Um, they, especially when the camera, air quotes camera, gets close up to something, it's you just see extreme detail in things like watches and clocks and facial hair and just things like that. Whereas I think this movie it's not like a mistake or anything. I think this movie works better, kind of with a slightly lower level of detail, but the same kind of style, I guess. Uh, I don't think that they were created the same way and anything like that. Just the look of it is similar, but
So like the
yeah,
high contrast kind of
yeah.
at times.
At time, well, I'll put it this way: there are moments in Waltz with Bashir where a lot of the color drains out, and you instantly start thinking about Renaissance. Um, whereas like that movie's almost tough to watch because it's all that. But anyway, this is a better movie than Renaissance. Although I very much enjoy that one. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I was going to mention a couple things like uh, I I like how the filmmaker put what I feel was some very I wouldn't say much needed, but let's say very welcome moments of subtle humor in some of the scenes. There's the thing with like the third guy he's talking to about his issues, or maybe it's the second guy. It might even just be the second guy. Yeah, that he's talking to. He goes over to his house and he's got this little boy in his arms, and like he sets him down and they're having this very adult grown-up conversation, and in the background this kid, which I don't know about you guys, I thought he was about 3 maybe. I mean, he's small enough to be cradled in his dad's arms when he opens the door. He's still very young, and he's like grabbing a big old kitchen knife off the countertop and just walking around in the background with it, and I'm like, ooh, oh, yikes. This kid's gonna do something, but it doesn't come of anything. It's not like it's not slapstick or anything like that, but it's funny. It reminded me of some other funny movies I'd seen where they did some stuff like that. And there's a few others too, like even though I'm sure that they would not have put this in the movie were it not based off of some sort of things that have and do happen in similar situations with warfare, and especially urban combat and everything. The scene where the guy is he's talking to one of his buddies who was in a tank, and they spend a decent amount of time showing this tank driving down a city street, and they are just wrecking people's shit. I mean, like it's hard to not be amused by it. And it all, once again, that all plays into it too. It's not just for jokes. Like it kind of lulls you into a false sense of security with that character, because just as things are getting great, they've got some nice music playing. You just got done watching them just like destroy a lot of public property with their tank. And they're just kind of rolling around. They're not doing anything too bad, but they're just along the way making a lot of destruction, as a tank does. And all of a sudden, you just get this jugular shot, and it's like, whoa, we're back into the movie. Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely these transitions, like whether it's musical transitions or other things that are just
Visual.
a bit like almost like even though the conversations themselves can be a low moment, like a resting moment in the roller coaster, it feels like, I guess those are the low, but then the musical sequences or the moments of levity is kind of like the up, and then the most of the movie is just this very dramatic like sequences of dread and concern, and yeah.
I mean, you said it already. It's a heavy movie.
Yeah, and it's definitely important to have some, because life is funny. Like life has. I mean, even the thing with the reporter walking, like in the
this
middle
poor
of all
cameraman is like so scared for very good reason.
It's like I'm I'm from the news. Don't fuck with me, type of thing. Yeah, I mean, obviously, and that's like many things in this movie. I'm sure that's exaggerated. It's the way that he remembers it, like that he walked tall. He probably didn't walk tall, but it came off that way because he's so ballsy.
Even
that,
if walking just like that with the camera guy exactly the way they portrayed it down one street, and then the way the guy's retelling it is like that's how he was all the time. It's like it's just crazy.
like something about the way he held himself or whatnot. Yeah, because you see, like in the end, he walks into the refugee camp with the back with the people to video the evidence, and you're like, I don't know if I would walk back in there. Who knows? Like, I mean, there might be some people there. There might be still some terrorists there that haven't been caught yet. Like, they might kill you, but people like that, like they're just made of something else. That's why some of them, some of them get caught by ISIS and get decapitated. But I guess you need to be a specific kind of person.
not a job I would want.
Yeah, no, it's a very specific type of person, but I guess it's the thrill. Yeah.
Possibly.
What's the Tom Sizemore? I think the action is the juice.
Yeah. May he rest in peace.
You were mentioning earlier the two sittings that you watched the movie with and everything. What was Diana's overall take on it?
Oh, I don't think I think she liked it. I don't think she had as strong of a reaction to it as I did. But yeah, mostly
To be fair, you had a very strong reaction to this movie.
Yeah, exactly. Most people wouldn't have the reaction that I have. Maybe I'm just pleasantly surprised because I've seen many Israeli movies and they're often just okay. So I was like,
That's
wow.
a good one.
Yeah, I was like, I'm glad like they really nailed one. But in any case, yeah, no, I think overall more than anything, because it's so close to home as far as like the subject matter, I think she mostly just think a reaction focused on the fact that like how messed up the whole thing is, you
Yeah.
know, that this happened and everything.
In a lot of ways, you know, I just am flashing back to all these arguments, some of them like really loud, with various people about, you know, the whole conflict in the area, well, in the region, and it's just so difficult. It's so complex. Yeah, like, you know, people talk about the two-state solution or something like that. The two-state solution is not a solution. It's not going to happen. I mean, even if it does happen, it's just going to keep going. It's the killing is just going to keep happening. I don't know what the answer is. And if you claim that you know what the answer is, you're a fucking moron. What? You're going to just change people. You're going to like shift an entire mentality for like billions of people in a certain region of the world. It's just, I mean, yeah, and of course, you know, when you're faced with that kind of a situation, everybody is going to do something stupid. Everybody is going to do something evil. Everybody is going to lash out, and it's just human nature. We are dealing with human nature, and the movie is dealing with human nature, and it's dealing with human nature in the most direct way, one of the most direct ways that you can do it, and it's dealing with one of the more illustrative examples of human nature that you can actually think of. And you know, the sad thing is most people don't even know that this thing happened nowadays. I mean, I would be surprised if my parents knew that this happened.
You mean the specific
Yeah,
massacre?
no, the specific massacre. I would be
Oh
surprised.
yeah, I mean it's a very small like
Yeah,
incident during a
right.
war where many other people died. It's just that these specific
Yeah,
people didn't have to die. They weren't soldiers. I mean, there
right.
were
Exactly.
terrorists within within the camp, but basically, if I had to guess, the rationale was like we don't want any more Israeli soldiers dying, and these Christians are like, you know, itching to like get in there and be involved, you know, because it was a
Yeah,
partnership essentially
yeah,
between the Christian Lebanese and the Israeli military. They
I
just
believe the
didn't
film calls them
realize
the phalanges.
phalange, yeah, like because they're kind of like in cooperation. It's all these like you know
yeah,
sort of like partnerships, much like you know the U.S. supports like the Syrian rebellion and things like that.
yeah,
But in this specific case, they had to have known that, and they said in the movie that they just, you know, somebody just assassinated their leader, There's and Bashir,
He was a
and
rock star leader too.
yeah, exactly. And they're gonna take their anger on someone, and and that someone can be anybody, not just Hezbollah or whoever like assassinated him. And so it's just a bad time to have them be unleashed on a village where there's women and children. It's just like not a good idea. And so it's just a bad call, just a bad decision along many, many bad decisions. And I think there's also hints of it in the movie that many mistakes are being made, and that as war as usual is, it's a bit of a chaos, and there's always like a disconnect between the leaders and the people on the ground, and then things get passed along very slowly until something gets done. So yeah, it's really one mistake could be like pretty big.
Yeah, and it's like the what we talk about with World War One, and with the powder keg, just where just constantly being on the brink, and one spark, and suddenly hell is unleashed.
One touch I liked in this movie, as far as like the like an aspect of war, is this whole notion, and it is also a comic relief, is when they're just shooting for like no reason. It's like, who are we shooting at? I don't know, just shoot. It's just like, if you shoot, then nobody's gonna come close to us. It's like it's such a messy business.
Yeah, and I thought the Israeli military was underfunded, but you can just like burn ammo like that.
Not during war, exactly. Like during peacetime, they're very they only shoot like expired ammunition and stuff. But during war, like all bets are off, and oftentimes they get like extra stuff from the U.S. shipped and whatnot if it's a wartime. So yeah. No, it's always nice when like a movie refreshes, like, say, like an aspect of like what it is in a war zone that's just so ridiculous that makes no sense.
Completely pointless side note. This movie has lots of nice scenes with the Galil rifle.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I thought about you. We're watching the movie.
Yeah, I was thinking
I was
about
like, I was saying like, oh, Galil, and then it's like, what? I was like, it's just a weapon, and we talked about it in the podcast. And also, if remember the scene where he waltzes with Bashir, that was the mag, the mag machine gun that I had mentioned to you at some point.
Yes. Yeah.
The one that you're not really supposed to handhold while you're shooting, but I guess that guy was so butch that he can actually do that.
It's worth mentioning that scene is, even though I'm sure that because this is what kind of movie this is, that it's probably based on something that truly happened. That scene is very reminiscent of Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, of like was it Mother or?
Yeah. What was it? Animal.
Animal. Oh, not Mother. Animal.
Why can't I think of it? I
Yeah,
mean, it's Adam
something.
Baldwin.
Adam Baldwin.
But his name in the movie though. It's
Animal or Mother. So who's Mother? There was one Mother and Animal. I think it's.
It might be Animal Mother.
I don't know.
Gil, you're the biggest Kubrick nerd of the group, so you
no,
should know
it's funny because like I remember like there was one in some war movie, someone was called Mother, like a nickname of a soldier, but. But I
right.
agree
It
that
was
he might have been Animal.
It's Animal Mother. It is what it is. It's Animal Mother. Anyway, Adam Baldwin's character, Animal Mother, grabs. He doesn't grab it. He is.
He is. Sorry, I just found that Animal Mother. Yes.
Yeah, he carries the M60 machine gun, which generally is not something you're firing while running, but he has his little badass moment where he runs out in the middle of gunfire and basically allows his whole troops behind him to like progress forward by a sheer feat of craziness. He's also shooting up into windows of buildings around him, much like this character was.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it. But yeah, no, it's definitely a cool scene, and it's something that you do sometimes do in the service is you do shoot that standing up, but generally it's supposed to be stationary.
Yeah.
I still think the next time you go over there, you should see if there's some way you can bring me one.
Well, Galil, because
yes,
because the mag definitely can't fit.
No. I want a Galil.
Yeah, someday. That's definitely a good way to end
it. Two gun nuts and a former Israeli military guy who isn't a gun nut.
Exactly. Go figure.